Aloha and welcome to Challenge Accepted, a podcast where every week we challenge each other back and forth to a new movie or show. Today we are doing a reacts for Agatha. I am one of your co-hosts, Thomas, and I'm here with Frank.
Hey everybody, yes, we are talking The Death's Hand in Mine. This is Lilia's trial. And now personally, let's jump off and get our reactions immediately. I think this is the best episode of the series. I was ecstatic about it afterwards. What did you think of this? I was like kind of losing it a little bit.
I knew you were excited because I was getting those texts. It was like bing, 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 bing. Like as it ended, I was like, I got 5 minutes left. Let me check that.
It was so good. I had to go for a walk afterwards.
Yeah,
and I have Survivor to do for Outlast podcast afterwards. So I didn't have much time, but I was like, let me just go outside. Let me go hang out with the dogs for a little bit. Think about what just happened and in the order of because the events are really hard to kind of cipher out on this, and then came back in and re-recorded my reaction with a little bit more sanity and put that out there because it was like, this is really good. But yeah, the reverse card tower thing, that was chef's kiss.
Yes. There was a lot of tightly written things in this, tightly edited things in this. It was a fantastic episode. I agree with you. I still am partial to last week's episode with Billy. Mm-hmm. Something about that I just loved so much. But this episode and what it does for Lilia's character and for the story, man, chef's kiss. They nailed it on this.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead. We're going to do the rundown on this, but it's going to be hard because we're literally telling 3 different timelines in one or at points in time. So forgive me if I jump around and forgive me if it only takes 30 seconds. But here we go. I'm starting this timer for the sake of just posterity at this point. All right. So we start off, we're back with Agatha and Billy on the road, and they're determined to trudge along into the next trial. They are constantly bickering at this point, really kind of poking each other and seeing at which end. We see one of the things that we see is that Billy does not feel like Wanda is his mom. That's important. And eventually they do get to the trial. In the trial, they are transformed into like stereotypical witches, and they have a tarot card table in the middle. As they start to do the tarot card, Billy's the one doing the tarot card. Swords fall from the ceiling, and then eventually the ceiling descends with all these swords in it. We jump over to Jen and Lilia. Jen and Lilia are walking in this cave. We hadn't seen them in the last episode, and we could tell that Lilia is jumping around in time, and Jen is kind of just being like, what? You just said this. And then we're seeing Jen in 3 different timelines. When she's a kid, talking to her mentor. Thank you. Yeah. When she's in the cave with Jen, and then in the future, when she's with Agatha and Billy helping them solve the puzzle. And so throughout this whole thing, we're starting to see these 3 different times connect, and then eventually they do all connect, and we see that Lilia has the answer to how to solve this. She does the tarot card puzzle and sees her future, and her future is death. She then ushers everybody out of the room. She stops the swords before the 7 come. She ushers everybody out of the room. The 7 comes, and she wisely is able to defeat the 7 and take them all out, including herself. And that is it with 20 to spare.
Well done. Well done, man. Yeah,
off the dome, folks.
That was pretty good. Yeah, you had definitely some time to spare. That's nicely done. And you made it pretty concise because I think from a description standpoint, this would be pretty hard to explain. But I think you did a fantastic job. But it's awesome because we get the answer to all the kooky moments that Lily has had throughout the season. Save Agatha, do this, all that. We get to see it from her perspective. And I just think the way it's filmed and the way it's shot, as you see her in these different moments, and the sentences kind of complete throughout the different episodes, you're like, wow, it makes so much sense. And also, like, I'd be a bag of nuts too if I was constantly jumping from different timelines. Everybody thinks she's kooky, but from her perspective, it makes total sense. So just shout out to the writers, the directors of this episode. They killed it.
There's a really good book. It's kind of an old famous one. It's called Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. And it's about a guy who's what's called unstuck in time is what they call it in the book. And he's basically living all timelines at once. And while you're reading the book, you're doing the same thing with him. And he's this World War II vet and everything like that. It's a fantastic book. And I used that as a reference to how Lilia is living, where she's living all the timelines at once. And she, as a kid,
I was just going to say, like,
right? Yeah.
Oh, no. For me, I was thinking Dr. Manhattan. Because, Dr. Manhattan's like, I experience everything at one time, and he's like, when he tells Black Canary or the canary, whatever, like,
Yeah.
hey, you know, in 5 minutes you're going to get mad at me, and then 10 minutes this is going to happen, and you know, like that was trippy. That's how
the
saw
moment
it.
you're explaining right there is some of my best dialogue, my favorite dialogue in comic books, is that moment where they're on the moon. I know exactly what part you're talking about. She sees his palace that he's been building. That is some great comic writing. I'm not a big Alan Moore fan. I'm a big That Conversation fan though.
Absolutely. One of the best top 50 or 100 novels of all time, you know, and that's why it's insane.
But so Lily is living all these times, and as a kid, it's overwhelming for her, and she's kind of trying to shun it, and her mentor is trying to tell her to accept it. And I would love to see this story redone through the mentor's perspective, where she's seeing this kid shift in and out the entire time. Yeah. And then at the end, at the end, when she's needing the power, it's starting to be forced upon her again at her older age. She eventually embraces it, and that's when she's able to. She even says, like, all the pieces are starting to fall into the right places, and she's able to see the piece as a whole, as a tapestry, instead of as a one piece at a time. Instead, she's seeing the complete quilt, and I just love that about Lilia. And I think Patti LuPone's portrayal of Lilia is masterful in the fact that she shows like confusion, success, mastery, fear. She's able to master it all. Because think about this. I mean, not to keep going on this, but to think about this, when she's talking to Jen, and shout out to Shir for this as well. Shir, I believe her name is. When Lilia's talking to her, like there's parts where she's like, wait, what? She's confused. And then later on when you see her talking to her, she's like, I'm only going to be here for a second, And it's right. It must have been fun to portray this character, I think, for Patti,
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I wasn't super familiar with her work, but my cousin, he's, definitely in the theater world in New York, and he's a theater actor. And, when we were talking about this show before it came out, and, I'm like, well, tell me about Patti LuPone, tell me about Joe Locke, tell me about these, people who've done theater. He was like, Patti LuPone, you don't know who she is? I was like, no. It was like, I said, I don't know who Michael Jordan is. He was like, flabbergasted. So, man, but I get it. After this episode, to your point, all the different emotions she has to show, from confusion to realization to fear to bravery. It's like, God, she killed it. And she is every bit a hero in this episode as any other Marvel hero we've seen in any other Disney Plus thing or movie. She just really crushes it. And I feel like she has the power. Like I feel confident in her ability. And she's just wonderful. Like I think they did such a good job of casting her. And man, I'm just blown away by what she's able to do. Throughout the season, she's killing it. But in this episode, you're like, this is why you cast her, because she's able to do so much in such a little amount of time. It's like it's a 36 minutes, I think, on the timestamp, but really you're getting like 30 minutes or less, and she's probably getting 15 out of it. And what she's able to do in that 15 is just like incredible. She's killed it.
I too did not know Patti LuPone well. I know her from 30 Rock. She plays Frank's mom. But it's a very big character, right? But since then, on TikTok and stuff like that, I'm seeing her performances a lot now. And because now my TikTok thinks I'm a big theater kid because of all the Patti LuPone stuff I'm watching. And it's like she's also got a beautiful singing voice, clearly, right? And I wish we kind of got a little bit of that in Agatha. I don't think we got a whole lot of her singing. We got a little bit in the first episode.
Yeah. But and apparently like there was like some cool behind the scenes. Joe Locke and Catherine Hahn were talking about it, but he's like, some of my favorite moments were she would just bust out into song and dance, and people are like, she's incredible, like was blowing everybody away in between takes. So she's so good. I think, man, how crazy would it have been to be her too? We get a sliver of it, but also if she could have figured out how her powers worked, she would have been one of the most OP characters in all of Marvel. Like Doctor Strange had to go through all the different timelines, the 4 million, whatever timelines to figure out the one possibility where they won. Like her powers is that she knows what's going to happen. It's going to happen exactly as she sees it. So that's just like an OP power if she could have figured it out.
If she could have figured it out, but I think that's part of the weakness, right? The kryptonite to the Superman for her is that she has to live it out to be able to see the complete tapestry. And so, her power is not actualized until it's at the end when it's that rolling a D20 moment.
Nicely done.
It's just so beautifully done. Okay, so let's rewind a little bit and go back to the three different timelines and kind of analyze them separately. I think is our best bet. And I would like to start with her as a kid. That is the Queen of Cups, I think it's called. When they're referencing back to the card, she's talking to her mentor there, and we hear later on that that's part of her coven. And I wrote down like, well, what happened to her first coven? And then she mentions it was a fever that took them all out, which at the time could have been for any reason, like just regular fever. It would have also been interesting if like they were trying to like banish out the devil or something, like some Mephisto old school stuff.
Okay.
Maybe we could get some hint to that, you know?
I mean, he could have gave them a sickness or whatever, you know, but without modern medicine and all that stuff, you know, something that she could have predicted was like, we shouldn't go here because, you know, everybody's going to get sick and they die. And the coven's like, you're crazy. We don't know what you're talking about. And then just does it anyway. She even says in like episode 1, too, she's like, I'm not, you know, I don't miss the old times when I would accurately predict things and nobody would believe me. And then terrible stuff would happen. So, that could have definitely been the case. We see that the next card, I don't know what the name of it's called, but we've kind of been getting hints to it where it's Jennifer Kale, the priestess. That's right. And she's kind of always surrounded by this light kind of emanating around her head. We even get a call out in one of the mid-season trailer when they're in that like morgue-ish place. Makes sense why we don't see some of the other characters there. Like we don't see Alice, we don't see Rio. But, you know, Jennifer Kale and her kind of really hit this moment where they really bond. And Jennifer's really starting to understand who she is and what she's able to do. But I think this kind of enlightens her and it allows her to maybe tap into who she is and with her powers. And that's why this card is played. What's your thought process? With the priestess
thing too, and a lot of the light that's coming into it, I think that in the next episode, she's going to be pinnacle to holding off Rio as kind of an antithesis to death. It would be light, healer to, you know, death and stuff like that. So I think there's going to be a moment where she needs to hold off death for just a second. Because now I think at the point now, Seven is gone, the Seven are gone, and now Rio is the main boss.
Right. Well done, sir. Good pickup. Yeah, I think that's great. We obviously get the night, and she's already been calling it out. She's kind of called this out several times to Alice, and I love that we get the flashback to her talking with Alice and saying, "Hey, am I kooky or am I crazy?" Right? That part the editors.
So let's call those editors out because I think that was the pinnacle of their editing, where like literally the dialogue does not slip. It's just the images are changing fast enough.
Yeah. So we got some staff writers. Laura Monti, we got post-production supervisor Amanda Weir, who I think was a part of that. The story editors at this part are Jason Rostovsky and Giovanna Sarkis. Sorry if I butchered your name, guys. But they all in tandem made these parts, these intercutting things flow so well together. And it reminds you of like, oh yeah, remember when she did that in episode 5? Oh yeah, remember when she did that in episode 1? And it just works so well together. And yeah, again, we're tapped into a little bit of how Lilia lives.
Yeah. And then we have the Three of Swords. And this is the card online that I'm seeing a lot of reaction to where they're like, holy cow, because I think the Three of Swords is kind of depicted like this a lot on the tarot cards. And we see the image of Agatha when she's worried about Billy dying, and the tree makes the swords into her, which is similar to the card, and showing that Agatha, yes, a villainous character, but is a character of sorrow and misery, and we should be sympathizing with her. And we should be sympathizing with her. And then I also want to bring it back to Joe is kind of close to the reverse tower thing. He's also Maleficent in the costuming. So I kind of feel like, I don't think Joe's a good guy. I'm sorry, I keep saying Billy. I don't think Billy's necessarily a good guy, which is very much Wanda Maximoff, where it's like, fight for you, with you, but selfish first. You know?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, I don't know if he's selfish. I think it's funny because everybody, like Agatha says a few episodes back, everybody is after power, right? Like Jen wants her power back. Lilia even wants to figure out how her power is and kind of get a hold on it. Everybody is power, but I think Billy, and we get the call out, I think in the beginning of this episode, where she's like, what do you want? Like, do you just want to bring your mom back? And I think truly what he wants, though, is to bring his brother back. Because she says, like, you want mommy? He's like, no, I have a mom. Which everybody online is like, gasp. Like, he doesn't claim the Scarlet Witch is his mom, which is like, how could you deny Elizabeth Olsen? But, he has. I think he actually is after his brother, but he's also now not afraid to push back against people because he sees how selfish they are. Mm-hmm. So I think he's like, you know what, forget you guys. Like, you're going to backstab me any chance you get. I'm going to take care of me first and foremost so that I can get my brother.
But let's look at Wanda Maximoff, who grew up in a very poor apartment, was eventually attacked with a Stark missile, and then through being constantly tortured in that jail cell, and it was just her and her brother, she went through the same path, right? She was an innocent, good person, and then was seeing how selfish everybody else is around her, and eventually was just like, I'm going to protect my brother, which is exactly what Billy's doing right now to become this, sorcerer.
Yeah. No, you're right. I just don't know if they'll go that way, especially with like a new hero, and especially for what Billy Maximoff represents to the community he's a part of, the Jewish community, the gay community. Like, I don't know if that would be the right move. Maybe they will, but I also read somewhere that Jack Schaefer wanted to show the similarities between him and Scarlet Witch, but also a big difference. So I think that will be a big part of it. But I just love those little conversations in the beginning of this episode because Billy is asking the questions we all ask. Is she really dead? Did you see a body? How do you know? It's like he's literally us in that moment. And it works with the dialogue too. And it works for the episode. Yeah. I think it's just, oh man, what a well-written episode.
And Agatha, in her very, gray Jedi way, is telling the truth and not the truth, right? Like, I saw the dead body, but only me. Right. These little things that is like, that's right. She's not lying, not helpful either. And of course, it's also like how Kevin Feige would answer the question too. It's like, we saw her die. Like that's
right. yeah, exactly. I know. So it's going to be interesting. I love it. I definitely feel like Agatha, for anybody out there that was like, she's kind of an anti-hero. Like, no, she's definitely still a villain. And I appreciate that more. I think we've seen even more of a villainous side to her. And especially now that we got the confirmation of death, I think it's shown she's like on death's side. She's willing to do what it takes to get what she needs, but also give death bodies that we saw from like the band episode, the 70s episode. Yeah.
And then I think too, like when we're developing out Billy's character, to your point, Wiccan is a good character all the way through. Like Wiccan's never a bad guy. Struggles with anxiety and stuff like that, but never a bad guy. And I hope that I think we kind of forget sometimes, and I hope it's amplified in here, is that one of the things that makes Billy less likely to step on the dark side than Agatha is Vision. Vision's his dad, and Vision is like never a bad guy. And he too is very much family first, but also like, he steps out on Wanda in WandaVision to try to like, wait, why are the people frozen? And so I'm hoping that we kind of get a little bit of that too. And I think that's what Vision Quest, which I am now more excited for Vision Quest than I ever have been because of this series. And that's a really good after effect of Agatha All Along.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Oh, I think that's a great call out. I think this is what happened. If I had to predict, just to remember, this is a Hail Mary. He gets his brother, finds out a way to get his brother, but they also get a hint to that Wanda is still out there, but he needs to go get her. Then you get Children's Crusade with him and Billy, or him and Tommy trying to find Wanda. And you can also tie in what was I talking? Children's Crusade with Vision Quest and like the West Coast Avengers. I think they tie in that story there too.
You just nailed it. You just nailed it.
I think So man, we're getting some type of nod or something about Billy at the end of this. Where Billy is, at least whose body he reincarnated into. Is it going to be? Do you think it'd be Ralph Boner? No way, right?
No. Too old.
No. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. I know. I wonder which kid they're going to cast for that. And like, because the big thing in the comics is everybody says, you guys look exactly alike. You guys look like twins, except for like your hair color. So they really have to cast someone who looks like Joe Locke. If not, Joe Locke is playing another version of Speed, but I don't know if that would be a good route to go.
No, that's not good. What if they just bring back the original Tommy, because he didn't go into somebody's body? Maybe only Billy did because Billy has the abilities of Wanda. And what if Speed didn't? Speed just stays out there and he has to be like wished back in through. So maybe they use the original kid for that.
Ooh, that'd be interesting. I'd be on board with that. It'd be kind of weird though. Like, wouldn't it really look like twins though if one's like 10 and one's 16 or whatever. But yeah, they could do that.
And then one of the big questions too that I was hoping we get an answer to, and it's at the end when they still believe Billy is the target of the tarot reading. And he asks, "Am I William or am I Billy?" And then that doesn't pan out. But that question was, and Lily is like, "That's a good question." And man, I wanted the answer to that, because I think that confused identity thing is something that, of course, Wiccan's character himself is very important in the comic books of trying to address for the readers, but also as a character right now in the storyline, like even we as viewers are asking that question: who's in charge right now? It's so sad that Billy Kaplan died, but nevertheless, it's great to see Billy Maximoff back. So we don't know who's in charge.
Yeah. I think you're right. That was such a fantastic question. So many good questions asked in this episode that we're wondering as the audience. And it's cool anytime like you are in the shoes of the character, like you guys are wondering the same thing at the same time. It just brings you right into the episode. So I thought that was so cool. The other thing with this is like the traps in the room. I love like an old school trap where it's like, we got to figure this out and got to figure out how this works, or we're all dead. And then the swords falling, I thought that was fantastic, how it gets reversed in the end. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like maybe my interpretation, if we don't get the answer, is that William Kaplan did die and Billy then took over his body. But there could be a little essence of like both people inside one body. But, I don't know if I care for that as much as I like, it was an empty vessel and then Billy Maximoff took over. I think that would be way cooler.
I fully agree with you. And I think the fact that Billy Kaplan died and then so I think Billy Maximoff is fully there. And I think that'll make him, once he learns that officially, that'll make him accept Wanda a little bit more. And then also kind of appreciate Kaplan parents in a different light, as in like, unknowingly took in a foster child, essentially. And so because that's key with Billy Kaplan's character, with Billy Maximoff's character, is the fact that he does have these two parents, and one of them is grounded and one of them is, the grandson of Magneto type of thing. So, keep both of them. I think that'd be really cool. That's where you can kind of have that Amon Vellani. One of the best things about Amon Vellani's Miss Marvel is her family. You can have those moments too with his family, and then out there fighting alongside the X-Men or something. So that'd be a blast.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah. And like how many heroes like have families? Like it doesn't happen too often, right? Spider-Man, Iron Man, Captain America.
Hawkeye, it's a big part of their identity when they do. And so you don't want to ditch that, because those who don't have it, it's not like Iron Man, the Pepper Potts things is kind of so flat. It's not, who cares anymore, but it's really cool part of their family when they keep it around,
Yeah. There's stakes. There's something to fight for.
Well said.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought that was fantastic. Then they finally do realize that, the challenge isn't about him. It's Lilia's challenge. And then she starts realizing like, okay, this is something that I have to confront. And yeah, I love the way she sells it, because it's like every card that she flips is a revelation of who she is and the journey she's been on. And then this relationship of Jennifer too, and her, now Jennifer's like really her friend and is rooting for her. Like, what are you doing? Like, is this okay? Are you taking a chance you shouldn't be taking? I thought that was fantastic. And then it gets to the point where they fall through the mud, they're in the cave, and then we see the Salem 7 kind of like moonwalk in, and then they hide. Cool. Yeah. But it gets to the point where Lily is kind of sacrificing herself to deal with the Salem 7.
So let's break down this timeline thing, because again, we were experiencing things in 3 different timelines. She's falling, and that phrase is brought up a few times. So we've seen the whole time we're thinking she's falling from into the cave, and when she lands, and then here comes death to say like, who I am. She's there to accept that version of Lilia there, but I think that's because that's where Lilia ends off. Like Lilia's not actually ending on the swords. She's falling when she does the tower reverse, which was, my God, masterfully done.
That was
but when
beautiful.
She does it, but mid fall of that, because that's how the episode started, was her mid falling in the princess dress. She shifts over to being in the cave, and that's where she actually dies. And Lilia and Death takes her from there. But then another version of Lilia, the time one gets up and helps out Jennifer. So I do like that she didn't die on swords. She died at the bottom of the cave talking to Rio and going with her to death.
By the time she falls on the sword, she had already accepted her death. Like that was already, that was like a kind of a past thing that happens for in the future for her, but she's already experienced it. So you're right. I love that. And also like shout out to the dressing, because a lot of this was, obviously some Disney stuff, but a lot of it was Wizard of Oz. So like Agatha is the Wicked Witch, and then she is, I forgot what the Good Witch is called.
Gwendolyn? Is it Gwendolyn?
Yeah, I think so. So she's, and Lilia's in the Good Witch's Gwendolyn's dress. So I think that was awesome. And I want to say Jennifer Kale looked like the Snow White witch a little bit.
People are saying the Snow White witch or the Rapunzel witch. Could be that one too.
Or Rapunzel. Okay, I could see that too. Yeah. That so either way, I think that was cool. Them like really diving into the lore and pop culture elements of witches that we're all super familiar with. So I thought that was really, really, really cool.
And then of course Billy is Maleficent in like some really great Maleficent cosplay. I'm hoping Billy got to keep that and is like going to show up at San Diego Comic-Con as a Maleficent. That'd be a really fun little nod.
Amazing. They were like, oh, look at you. Well, if the cheekbones fit. Like oh man, like he's just having fun with this. You go off.
They all are for sure. Oh man. So Lilia's bouncing around, and in the end, after she accepts her death, I was the final thing we see of her is Beck as the Queen of Cups as a kid, talking to her mentor, and oh my God, I love this scene. I'm already fucking like in love with this scene, right? But then the mentor's like, there you are. It's good to see you back. Good to see you accept. And that's like the Star Trek brain of me, right? It's like, oh my God, I would love to see this scene done through the mentor's point of view, where she's seeing this child and the personality of the child is aging here and there. And finally she just sees like this peace come to the child's eyes and be like, now you're a full witch and now you accept it. And it's just like, that is some really good storytelling. And it's even buttoned up too, where she tells Jen, like, I've always loved witch, being a sister witch or whatever, like she always loved being a witch. And it was something that she struggled with her whole life, but really you see, no, she actually loved it. And sends Jen off for the next trial. I really think I think Lilia knows Jen has to sacrifice herself next. I think that's kind of the idea.
I think so. Yeah, we kind of hinted at it. I think Agatha's going to have to calm something in Billy's mind and maybe give him an answer, right? We saw that from the mid-season trailer, that she's like holding her hands over his head. And he's like screaming, but we don't see Jennifer Kale in that scene. So where did she go? So something, maybe she does sacrifice herself. And also it's like, how would you explain in the MCU that there's all these powerful witches around and nobody knows about them? So yes, unfortunately, I think they're going to kill him off, but I think there's opportunities for these characters to come back in little ways, especially as they become popular and all that. But I think that was fantastic. Anytime you can kind of make the end the beginning and do it in a satisfying way, you got to give a round of applause for that. And they do it in this one. It's just, so good.
I would love to see the storyboard on this. Like, what's that crazy storyboard look like?
Oh, man. Yeah. I would probably need like diagrams and notes on notes to talk about like this leads into this and this leads into this. And then, cinematography, editing on this episode, incredible. One thing that we didn't really dive into that I do want to talk to you about is Rio. We finally get the reveal that she's death. We kind of talked about it last episode. Thank you. Kind of give me hints, and we figured it out back then. As soon as the Ouija board said death in that last episode, I was like, okay, I know who Rio is. But we get this really cool reveal of her stepping out of the shadows and the way her face looks. Like you were kind of mentioning it. We were talking about it before we hit record. Yeah. Let's talk about that. What she looked like.
Very cool visual effect where they kind of superimpose both a mask and her eyes into one face. And the way that she approaches too is creepy, but also kind of like the way she talks to Lily is like, you know who I am, and Lilia. And there is kind of this thing with death, and I kind of it's we talked about Good Omens in the past. It's a little bit of Good Omens where it's like, it's not a fun job, but you know who I am. I have to accept you. I have to bring you with me. And Lilia at this time is now willing to accept that in a way that she feared it in the past. And so I think Aubrey Plaza, will be the villain. I think Ryu will be the villain of villains, right? The show's very complicated in that way. I think it's just a necessary job that she has to do. And I think that's something that she said earlier on in the show when Agatha scoffed at it and she says, hey, I got to take people. It's my job. And Agatha scoffed at it because presumably that was Nicholas Scratch that she had to take. Yeah. And I think that's kind of like this reluctant thing that she has to do, you know?
Right. It's like, yeah, I didn't choose this job. This is the job I have and I have to do it. I'm sorry. But you're right. Yeah. I didn't think about that. Maybe she had to collect Nicholas Scratch for Mephisto. I'm still holding out. I still think we could get a Mephisto call out in the last episode. I think you don't just drop a name like that from Jennifer Kale, at the beach house thing if you're not going to pay it off somewhere, especially since we know that character's been cast. I think we still get something. So I think he could ultimately be the big bad. But I think we will see Rio as more of a sympathetic character in these last couple episodes, where it's like, again, if anybody's familiar with the Sandman, the Sandman's sister or Morpheus' sister is Death, and she's so lovely about it. One of my favorite episodes of TV a couple years ago was that episode where he runs into his sister. It's a wonderful graphic novel, but for anybody out there, just go check out this episode. And his sister is Death, and she has to like usher different people in to the afterlife, whether it was an accident or if they're dying from old age, whatever it was. It's beautifully done. And it really represents like the burden of an entity that would be death. It's like an unfortunate job, but like my job is to carry them peacefully on to the next, chapter of existence. And
provide comfort in a most uncomfortable time too. Like I believe even that is my favorite episode of that series, by the way. But I believe even Sandman says like, do we have to do this? And it's like, you have to do your job. I have to do mine. And it's the baby scene specifically. You're like, oh my God, that breaks my heart.
Yeah, that was tough. That was tough. Yeah. But yeah, I think we're going to be getting some of that from Rio, and there's going to be a lot of explanations of like, why did characters and why have characters in the MCU died? Like, why did this have to end? And, is the end just the end? I mean, we've seen a few afterlives already in Marvel, but I think there's going to be such a nice explanation. If the writing keeps following the way the show has been going, I think Jack Shaver is going to explain a beautiful reasoning for why Rio exists, why Lady Death exists, and why, this circle of life that we've seen from all these characters, why their stories or their circles had to end. And the circle doesn't really end, but you know what I mean? Yeah. But so I don't know. I'm so excited to see now that we got the reveal. It just opens up this whole new can of worms that we can explore with Aubrey Plaza and Rio Vidal, and like just the right choice. Like we've noticed throughout the show, anytime death is mentioned or someone dying, Rio hasn't exactly had like the most normal reaction. She's been a little too excited about people about to die. So I think this is going to be awesome. And hopefully we get a connection between her and Thanos down the line, which was a big relationship in the comics.
Yeah. And Deadpool. I want a little bit of Deadpool wink too.
Yeah. Aubrey Plaza and Ryan Reynolds, like that would be some pretty wild scenes. I'm here for it.
I'm here for it too. I want to quickly shout out some visuals that I caught, specifically the moon door. We've seen it before on the other trials, where it shows, a center moon, a crescent moon, and then the phases of the moon going around it. What do you think that represents?
I think it was more about the elements. If you listen to or look at the lyrics of the song for The Witch's Road, they talk about like earth and air and wind and fire. And we've kind of gotten that, right? We got the fire episode, which was the 70s one. We got the water one, which was the beach house. I'm not sure if there's like another element. Would this one be earth?
This one feels like earth because they were underground a lot and it was kind of.
Yeah, that's true. And they kind of emerge from the earth. Yeah, I mean, they kind of come out of the dirt like Jennifer and Lilia does. So does Agatha. So did when we first meet Rio as the Green Witch. She kind of comes out. So maybe this is the earth one. Maybe it's the air one if you want to talk about like people falling or all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I think it just kind of had to relate more to the lyrics to The Witch's Road actually were literally how the road goes. If you look at it. It's the adventure that they're going on. It's not just this song that the witch is singing that everybody knows. It's like actually it gives you the hints to what you can expect by going on this journey. And so I don't know. That's kind of what I got from it.
I got the idea that everything is repeating, even the fact that like that's how the journey will happen for every coven, and like just like the moon, like it'll be a full moon this time, it'll be a full moon again, and everything's circular, and we're seeing it again with Lilia right now, who lives her life this way. But I think in the end of this road, it'll end the same way that Agatha's been on the road before, stuff like that. I think that's the idea, is that everything is circular.
Okay, you said such a good thing. You said the way Agatha has been on the road before. I love this because I think we've been talking about it too, having doubts. Has Agatha actually been on the witch's road? And Billy calls it out in the beginning, where he was like, I was confident that you had done this before, but I don't know if you have. And has that been one thing that Agatha has been lying about? Has she actually survived the witch's road, or did she say that, make up that rumor so everybody would believe that she's done it, but she actually hasn't? I don't know. That line right there made me think that she really has never completed the witch's road before.
Okay. I see Billy saying that. Now, here's the thing. Then where is Nicholas Scratch? And I thought her mom sacrificed her on the witch's road as well, which then that would mean 2 times on the witch's road myself that I'm thinking of.
No, I don't know about the mom sacrificing her, but Nicholas Scratch could have literally been a 1-for-1 with Mephisto. It could have been like, hey, you take his soul. Not even
with the road. Okay.
Yep, not even with the road. I get the Darkhold, you get in Nicholas. Yeah. So I think that there's that. But also they asked her, how many people did you do it with last time? And she raised up 1 finger. She said 1. You can't do the witch's road by yourself. So that makes me think that she didn't do it. I don't know. I think maybe she didn't pass it.
My not big counter to that is the fact that I think they said how many finished the witch's road last time.
Finished. That's true.
Yeah. And I think that's, again, going back to that circular thing where it's like, it'll go down to just 1 in this one. And I think only Billy will survive this adventure.
For sure. Yeah, it could be. Oh, no, totally. I agree with you on that. I think maybe Billy is the only one that survives, but I still feel like Agatha, a lot of who the world thinks he is, at least the witches in the world, have been kind of wrong. So I think there's a story of like, she kind of lies a lot to get what she wants. Agreed. Maybe so much so that I think she knows the truth, but she doesn't want to be honest. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I still feel like maybe that was the hint. It's such an odd thing to say, where he's questioning his confidence in her, not only because she lied, but also in her ability to literally say like, I don't even think you've done this before. And she doesn't really say like, oh, I have. It's just like, it makes me think maybe she hasn't.
Maybe she was the sacrifice last time, just like Billy was potentially, like, was kind of the sacrifice for this one. And Nicholas was the sacrifice. I don't know. Yeah, we're going to get a lot of answers here pretty soon. I have so many.
I love that line, because if it comes out to be true, I'm like, yes. It just kind of adds another layer to Agatha. She got this whole coven together on the false pretense that she had passed before. Yeah. And then everybody gets sacrificed. Again, I think to your point, she will get sacrificed too. That doesn't mean she's out. In the comics, she dies and still goes around with Wanda on several adventures as a ghost. So like, that opportunity is still there. It would also align with the comics. And also that would allow Billy to survive and then get his whatever he wants, which I think very much so is Tommy. And
she could go around instead of with Wanda, but with Billy too, as like his ghost companion, which is always fun. Totally. I do like, just as a side, this is very lighthearted in comparison to all the stuff we're talking about, but the way that she's like, oh, come on, I was your old babysitter. And I was like, that's right. I keep forgetting about that. Such a cute little thing.
I was your mom's ex-best friend, like that kind of stuff.
Shout out to the fact that, okay, so remember how we were talking about how in WandaVision, when he's talking to Agatha, he says, I like how you're so quiet. In this one, when Billy's there, I know you just said, when Billy immediately starts reading Lilia's mind, and she's like, well, he's like, you're so loud. And it's like, oh, way to the Wicked Witch and Gwendolyn. It's the opposites of each other right now.
Yeah, but also like tying into his powers that we saw in WandaVision. It's like, did that through line is there? Like, and it's interesting. Like, if you even flash back to the Evan Peters episode with Ralph Boner, he's like, oh, the one brother who's fast and the other one who reads minds. Like, they're really playing into this idea that his powers are like telepathic in nature, but it's not. Like, that's it's well done. It's well done, and there's a through line there. And I think that's going to be a realization for Billy down the line, where it's like, oh, my powers aren't just telepathic. It's more. It's reality warping. It's magic. Yeah. It's, tying more to his mom. These things are so cool. They're connecting in awesome ways.
Do you think the telepathic part is the mutant side of him, and then the other part is the witch's side of him? Like with Wanda, I think the natural thing was for her to manipulate people in their minds, and then she gained witch powers. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, I mean, she's always had this innate ability to tap into magic, right? And the comics have been bouncing back and forth between she's a mutant, she's not, she's a mutant, she's not, and they've kind of settled now on that she's not a mutant. Her powers are reality warping based, but because of that, it pulls from this area of magic that not a lot of people are able to access. So she is a special thing. I think it's going to be similar for him, and I think the way it manifests early on is that I want to know so much about who you are and the way you think that I'm able to give myself the ability to tap into mind reading, like reading your mind. Mm-hmm. So I think that's how it manifests early on. But I think eventually it'll get to the point where he'll be able to do that, but they'll also see like, hey, this is an invasive thing. And the more I can read someone's mind, the worse it's going to be. I mean, this kind of has situations with Hulkling, it has situations with other Young Avengers in the comics where it's like, yeah, I can read your mind, but like the more I do it, the worse it is for me. Mm-hmm. So like, I'm going to push myself away and kind of control what I can control. And yeah, I don't know. That's my take on it.
I've got more questions, and while things are being answered, more questions are being posed.
Right.
This show has impressed me on every front, and I'm so excited for only 2 more episodes. I'm happy it's been a longer run, but still we're coming to an end, and that's
I believe it's ending. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's just like, and every episode seemingly like gets better in some aspect, in some way, and then like the adventure is just building, and like I love it because it started off really slow and it was very methodical and it was taking its time, and now it's just like we're on this roller coaster and we're getting to the final drop, and where that final drop leads us, I have no idea, but it is just a ride. Yeah, so fun.
Beautifully done episode. That Tower Reverse card, it was very well put together. Shout out again to those editors, to the story writers. And then the next episode, we know it's gonna be Jen's trial, and I think that final episode is going to be the most MCU episode, kind of like we got with WandaVision. That final episode was very Avengers-esque. And I think that's what we might get Mephisto. We might get a WandaVision cameo. That would be really fun. A Wanda cameo.
What's the chance? I think that's a big question. Like the directors or showrunners have both said for the Penguin, for Agatha, like we're not seeing Wanda and we're not seeing Batman. One of these 2 shows is going to give us something. Like, I don't know.
Penguin, I think Elizabeth Olsen's more likely to come back for a cameo than Robert Pattinson is.
Yeah. And the fact that I don't really know what movies or anything she's shooting, and she's been doing kind of like the late night talk show thing, makes me think we're going to get her. I mean, I think Mephisto more than I think Elizabeth Olsen, but I would not be surprised to see Elizabeth Olsen. I mean, I would be surprised, but not surprised.
This is so silly to base this off of this, but I'm with the Disneyland merch. I'm thinking it's going to be Scarlet Witch because by the way, this week they just added all of the Agatha merch. Just came out this week at Disneyland, and it's like those are side by side. I'm like, you don't put those side by side without reminding everybody about Wanda.
Both the ears are next to each other on like the stand.
There's the end cap. There's the end cap that's Agatha, and there's the end cap that's Wanda. And it's like you don't put those 2 lines out at the same time unless you're going to remind people about Wanda.
Yep, Scarlet Witch confirmed for the last episode.
Don't say that though. You know how toxic that will be online.
Confirmed, everybody.
Confirmed. Oh man, this is good times, guys.
Yeah, it is awesome.
All right, so we just had the Shining episode come out, guys, so make sure you check that out. I also have a full article over there with a review and, of course, the podcast itself, so you guys can check that all out. I thought it was a really good episode of ours. That was one of those 2 where we were talking about the filming and the editing and stuff, so check that out, guys. And then the next up is, of course, The Last Twilight that we'll be reviewing.
Very scary vampire movie. I don't know if you can handle it. It's going to be terrifying.
I want to give a shout out to Kyle and Scott for talking me through this on Geek Freaks when we were talking about, like, he challenged me to Twilight. And they were like, well, if it's the last one, it's not bad.
Really? Yeah.
They were both sympathetic to the situation, but they were like, well, at least you don't have to watch the one before that was really bad. I'm like, I think I remember that one where she had a baby.
And at least you don't have to watch it every year around this time for the rest of your life.
True. So. Actually, yeah, you're the one that really suffers.
You can suffer 1 season with me.
But that's coming up next, guys. So make sure you join us and subscribe. And hit us up with those reviews. We always appreciate those. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.